The U.S. Defiant floated in the vast docking bay like an ancient relic among jewels. Captain Jack Rivera stood at the viewport, watching as gleaming alien ships moved gracefully around his vessel. The comparison wasn't kind. The Defiant was blocky, with patches of different colored metal where repairs had been made. Its hull was actual steel and titanium, not the living crystal the Meludians used or the quantum-phased materials of the Vorteri ships. "They're laughing at us again," said Susan Miller, his first officer. She handed him a tablet showing their patrol assignment. As usual, they'd been given the least important sector. "Let them laugh," Rivera said, though the constant disrespect stung. At 53, he should have been enjoying retirement. Instead, Earth Command had pulled him back for one final mission: represent humanity in the Galactic Defense Coalition. Some representation. The Defiant had been Earth's pride 20 years ago, an exploration vessel later retrofitted with faster-than-light technology after first contact. Now it was the only ship Earth could spare for the Coalition. "Captain, the Tresic ambassador requests permission to board," said Lieutenant Olivia Chen through the comm system. "He brings other Coalition representatives." Rivera straightened his uniform. Time to play nice. The alien contingent arrived with the usual mix of politeness and poorly hidden scorn. Ambassador Kluvik of the Tresic towered over the humans, his scaled skin shifting between green and blue as he moved. "Captain Rivera," he said, his translator making his clicks and whistles into flat English, "we were just discussing your ship's unusual design. She's not pretty, but she gets the job done," Rivera replied. A Meludian officer with 6 limbs gestured at the walls. "You still use physical controls. How quaint." Several aliens chuckled. Rivera forced a smile. Old habits. They toured the ship, each stop bringing new snide comments. The engine room drew particular interest. Chief Engineer Alan Blackwood proudly showed off his maintenance work, even as the aliens exchanged looks of pity. "You burn actual atoms for power?" asked a Vorteri scientist, her luminescent skin pulsing with what seemed like amusement. "Alongside your FTL core." "How?" "Resourceful." Blackwood's face reddened. "Our nuclear engines provide reliable thrust when—" "Yes, yes," interrupted the Vortari. "Very interesting museum piece." In the mess hall later, Rivera found Ambassador Diane Gomes sitting alone, looking defeated. She was Earth's voice in coalition politics, a thankless job. "Rough day?" he asked, sitting opposite her. "The Coalition War Council denied our request for technology sharing again," she said. "The Tresic representative suggested we focus on providing raw materials instead of trying to fight." Rivera felt his temper rise. "We didn't join to be suppliers. We're here to fight the Vraxian horde like everyone else." "With this ship?" Gomes looked around sadly. "Even I have trouble arguing that point." The ship's intercom interrupted them. "Captain, to the bridge." On the bridge, Officer Chen showed him their new orders. The Defiant was assigned to patrol the outermost edge of Coalition space, far from any expected Vraxian activity. "The rear guard," said Security Chief Nicole Sanchez bitterly. "They don't trust us on the front lines." Rivera studied the star map. Sector 87 was empty space, nothing worth protecting. It was busy work to keep them out of the way. "Plot the course," he ordered Flight Officer Lisa Rodriguez. "We leave in 6 hours." As the crew prepared for departure, Rivera watched the Coalition flagship glide past their viewport. It was truly magnificent, a city in space with weapons that could shatter moons. "One day they'll see what we can do," said Miller, standing beside him. Rivera nodded. "Let's hope we live long enough to prove it." The Defiant left the Coalition station without ceremony. No one bothered to see them off. Just another obsolete ship with its outdated crew, sent to patrol empty space while the real warriors fought the war. If only they knew what humans could do when underestimated. 3 weeks into their patrol of Sector 87, the crew of the Defiant settled into a dull routine. The vast emptiness of space offered little excitement. Captain Rivera spent most days reviewing reports in his quarters, wondering if this assignment was the Coalition's way of forcing him into retirement after all. The bridge was quiet when the alert came. Combat Systems Officer Peter Wright sat up straight at his console, suddenly wide awake. "Captain to the bridge," he called over the intercom. "Unknown vessel detected." Rivera arrived within minutes, First Officer Miller right behind him. "Report," he ordered, taking his seat. "Single ship, moving fast," said Wright, not broadcasting any identification. Miller leaned over the sensor display. "Could be a merchant trying to avoid tariffs." "In this empty sector?" Rivera shook his head. "Not likely." "Olivia, any communications?" Lieutenant Chen adjusted her earpiece. "Nothing on standard frequencies, but I'm picking up unusual energy patterns. Could be a form of communication." "Put it on speaker." The bridge filled with strange clicking sounds and low hums. Everyone looked confused except Chen, whose eyes widened. "That's a Vraxian pattern," she said. "I studied their communication methods at the Academy. This is a Vraxian scout ship." The mood on the bridge shifted instantly. The Vraxian horde was the enemy the Coalition had formed to fight, a race of conquerors moving through the galaxy like a plague. "Battle stations," Rivera ordered. "Notify Coalition Command." "Sir," said Communications Officer Chen, "our message won't reach them for hours. We're on our own." Rivera nodded grimly. "Then we handle this ourselves." As the crew prepared for possible combat, Wright made an unusual discovery. "Captain, our sensors are picking up the Vraxian ship clearly, but their scans seem to be missing us." Engineer Blackwood, who had joined them on the bridge, studied the readings. "It's our hull," he said with growing excitement. "The Vraxians use quantum resonance scanning. Our primitive metal hull partially blocks it." Rivera exchanged looks with Miller. "Can we use this advantage?" "If we approach from within the radiation shadow of that moon," Miller suggested, pointing to a nearby celestial body, "we might get close enough for a surprise attack." It was risky, but Rivera saw few alternatives. "Do it." Flight Officer Rodriguez guided the Defiant with careful precision, using minimal power. The old ship's nuclear engines, which the aliens had mocked, produced less detectable energy than the standard Coalition drives. As they closed in, Wright prepared the weapon systems. "They still haven't detected us. Hold position," Rivera ordered when they were within striking range. "Ms. Chen, can you access their systems?" Chen's fingers flew over her console. "Yes, sir. Their cybersecurity doesn't account for our outdated intrusion methods. They're expecting quantum algorithms, not simple code. Download everything you can, then disable their engines on my mark." The bridge crew worked with focused intensity. When Rivera finally gave the order, the Defiant launched its attack. The Vraxian scout, caught completely by surprise, managed only a single ineffective countermeasure before its engines went dark. "We did it," Miller said, disbelief in her voice. "We actually captured a Vraxian scout intact." Security Chief Sanchez led a boarding team to secure the vessel. They found valuable intelligence and technology that could help the Coalition understand their enemy better. When they finally reached Coalition Command, the response was less enthusiastic than expected. "Fortunate encounter," said the Tresic commander in his transmission. "Deliver the captured vessel to Outpost 47 for proper analysis by qualified experts." Rivera closed the transmission, his jaw tight with frustration. "They think it was luck," said Miller. "Let them," Rivera replied. "But we know better." The Defiant continued its patrol, now with slightly more important routes assigned. The Coalition might not admit it yet, but the humans had proven something important. Sometimes, being underestimated was the greatest advantage of all. The Defiant docked at Outpost 47, a small Coalition station near the border of Vraxian space. Despite their success in capturing the scout ship, the crew received little recognition. The alien technicians quickly took over the examination of the Vraxian vessel, pushing the humans aside. But engineer Alan Blackwood wasn't so easily dismissed. Late at night, when most of the station slept, he would slip back to study the Vraxian technology. Science officer Frank Martinez often joined him, bringing coffee and fresh eyes to their secret work. "Look at this," Blackwood said one night, pointing to the Vraxian shield generator. "Their shields operate on a completely different frequency than coalition ships." Martinez leaned closer. "That's why our weapons barely scratch them." "Exactly. But our old nuclear engines," Blackwood's eyes lit up. "The radiation they produce might disrupt these shields." For the next week, they tested their theory using computer models. The math was clear. The specific radiation signature from the Defiant's nuclear engines could weaken Vraxian shields by up to 40%. When Captain Rivera heard their findings, he immediately called a meeting with Coalition Command. "With all due respect, Captain," said Admiral Skivor of the Tresic forces, "your engineers lack the qualifications to make such assessments." "Our engineers discovered a weakness in Vraxian defenses," Rivera insisted. "If we modify our engines to direct the radiation." "Absolutely not," interrupted a Maludian commander. "Such primitive modifications would never work against advanced Vraxian technology." The meeting ended with their proposal rejected. As they walked back to the Defiant, First Officer Miller could barely contain her frustration. "They won't even test it," she said. "Too busy looking down on us to see we might have the answer." Rivera stopped walking. "Who said we need their permission to test it?" Back on the Defiant, the crew gathered in the mess hall. Rivera laid out his plan. "It's risky," he admitted. "If we're caught modifying the ship without approval, we could be expelled from the Coalition." "And if we do nothing?" asked Security Chief Sanchez. "Then we keep watching superior Coalition ships get destroyed because they're too proud to try something new," Rivera answered. The vote was unanimous. They would modify the Defiant in secret. Blackwood led the engineering effort, working with Martinez to redesign the engine output. They needed special materials, which they gathered during stops at abandoned human outposts. Lieutenant Rodriguez recalibrated the navigation systems to handle the new power distribution. Wright adjusted the weapons to work with the modified engines. Commander Sktar, a young Tresic officer who had witnessed the capture of the Vraxian scout, became curious about their activities. Rather than report them, he offered to help. "My sister was on the Valiant," he explained, referring to a Coalition ship destroyed in a recent battle. "Your approach has merit." With Sktar's help, they gained access to more resources and avoided inspection. A small group of other alien officers began to take interest in the human methods. "You fight differently," said Sktar one evening as he watched Security Chief Sanchez train the crew in boarding tactics. "We focus on overwhelming force. You adapt to limitations." "Humans have always had to do more with less," Sanchez replied. "It's how we survived on Earth." As the modifications neared completion, alarming news reached the outpost. 3 Coalition fleets had engaged a Vraxian force and suffered heavy losses. The Vraxians were pushing deeper into Coalition territory. "Orders just came in," Miller told Rivera. "All ships are to fall back to defensive positions." The Vraxians broke through the main line. Rivera looked around at his crew, at the ship they had secretly transformed. "Get us ready to move out. It's time to see if our modifications work." "But our orders." "Sometimes orders need to be interpreted creatively," Rivera said with a grim smile. "The Vraxians are coming, and we'll be ready for them." The Defiant raced through space, pushing its engines harder than ever before. Urgent distress calls flooded in from all directions. The Vraxian offensive had caught the Coalition completely off guard. "Status report," Rivera ordered as they approached the Cygnus research station. 3 Vraxian attack ships in orbit. Officer Wright replied. "The station's shields are failing." 200 scientists and support staff were trapped on the station. The Defiant had been ordered to evacuate them, but they'd arrived to find the evacuation already blocked by Vraxian forces. "Any other Coalition ships responding?" Rivera asked. Miller shook her head. The nearest battle group is 4 hours away. Rivera studied the tactical display. The Vraxian ships were larger and more heavily armed than the Defiant. By conventional thinking, they had no chance. "Are the engine modifications ready?" he asked. Blackwood's voice came through the comm. "Yes, sir, but they haven't been tested. We can't be sure." "No time like the present," Rivera interrupted. "Prepare to engage." The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. This would be their first real test against multiple Vraxian warships. "Flight plan plotted," announced Rodriguez, taking us in close to the largest vessel. "Divert all power to the modified engines," Rivera ordered. "Let's see if our theory works." The Defiant accelerated toward the Vraxian ships, which immediately turned to intercept. Enemy weapons fire flashed past them as Rodriguez executed evasive maneuvers. They'd locked onto us. Wright warned. "Now, Alan," Rivera called. Blackwood activated the modified engines. A pulse of radiation surged from the Defiant, invisible but potent. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the sensors showed the nearest Vraxian ship shields flickering. "It's working," Martinez exclaimed. "Their shield strength is dropping." "Fire main weapons," Rivera ordered. The Defiant's weapons struck the weakened shields and broke through. The Vraxian ship lurched sideways, damaged but still operational. "The other ships are changing formation," Miller reported. "They're adapting." The battle intensified. The Defiant darted between the larger ships, using its smaller size and greater maneuverability to its advantage. Each time Blackwood activated the radiation pulse, they struck at the vulnerable Vraxian shields. But the Defiant wasn't untouchable. A direct hit rocked the ship, throwing the crew against their stations. Smoke filled the bridge as systems overloaded. "Damage report," Rivera called out. "Hull breach on Deck 3, Sanchez reported. "Medical bay hit hard." In the medical bay, Chief Medical Officer Gregory Phillips worked frantically to move patients away from the damaged section. The ship shuddered again as another hit landed. "Seal off sections 15 through 17, Rivera ordered. "Rodriguez, get us behind that moon for cover." "Sir," Chen interrupted, "I'm receiving a transmission from the research station. They've loaded everyone into escape pods, but they need cover to launch." Rivera made his decision instantly. "Forget the moon. Take us back to the station." The Defiant swung around, radiation pulse firing continuously now. 2 of the Vraxian ships followed, their weapons reaching for the human vessel. "Shields down to 20%, Wright called. "Keep them focused on us," Rivera ordered. "Give those pods time to launch." The Defiant absorbed punishing hits as it drew the Vraxian fire away from the escaping civilians. Phillips reported mounting casualties, but the crew held their positions. Rodriguez performed maneuvers the old ship was never designed for, pushing the frame to its limits. When a Vraxian missile locked onto them, she flew directly toward the third enemy ship, breaking away at the last second. The missile hit the Vraxian vessel instead. "Station reports all pods away," Chen announced. Their mission accomplished, Rivera ordered a retreat. The damaged Defiant limped away. Having achieved what should have been impossible, they had faced 3 Vraxian warships and survived. Hours later, when they rendezvoused with coalition forces, the alien commanders could no longer dismiss the human ship with contempt. Against all expectations, the laughable human vessel had just saved hundreds of lives and damaged 3 enemy ships. The legend of the Defiant had begun. The coalition headquarters buzzed with unusual activity. Alien officers hurried through corridors, their usual calm replaced by urgent purpose. At the center of this storm stood Captain Rivera and his senior crew, summoned by the coalition high command. "Explain again how your radiation pulse affects Vraxian shields," demanded Admiral Skvor, who had previously dismissed their ideas. Blackwood shared a quick glance with Martinez before answering. "The nuclear engines produce a specific radiation pattern. When modified and focused, it creates interference with the frequency of Vraxian shield generators. The grand meeting chamber had once intimidated Rivera. Now he stood confidently as the aliens who had mocked his ship asked for help. "We lost 7 advanced battleships in the last engagement," a Meludian commander admitted. "None of them accomplished what your Defiant managed to do." Ambassador Gomes sat straighter in her chair. For months, she had been ignored in coalition meetings. Today, everyone waited for her to speak. "Earth is prepared to share our modifications," she said, "but as equal partners, not just suppliers of raw materials." The coalition leaders reluctantly agreed. Suddenly, the Defiant's crew found themselves the center of attention. Engineer Blackwood led teams of alien technicians through the modification process. Science Officer Martinez worked with coalition scientists to refine the radiation pulse. Commander Scar was officially assigned as liaison between human and alien forces. "My superiors were wrong about humans," he told Rivera privately. "Your methods are different, but effective." In the ship's mess hall, now crowded with both human crew and alien visitors, First Officer Miller shared meals with officers who had once looked down on them. "Why didn't your people just build new ships with advanced technology?" asked a young Meludian officer. "Resources," Miller explained. "Earth is still recovering from our climate wars. We had to work with what we had." "But that forced you to think differently," Scar added. "While we relied on superior technology, you relied on adaptability." Not everyone embraced the change. Some alien officers still viewed humans as primitive newcomers who got lucky. They watched with skepticism as coalition ships were modified following the Defiant's example. Security Chief Sanchez established joint training sessions, teaching coalition forces the boarding tactics that had worked against the Vraxians. "Their ships are designed to repel attacks from outside," she explained. "They're vulnerable once you get past their outer defenses." Flight Officer Rodriguez worked with alien pilots, showing them maneuvers that could confuse Vraxian targeting systems. "Their computers predict standard attack patterns," she said. "So don't be standard." Meanwhile, Rivera and the coalition admirals developed a bold plan. Intelligence showed a key Vraxian supply base in the Ta City system. If destroyed, it would cripple the Vraxian advance. "The base is heavily defended," Admiral Scavor warned. "Previous attempts to reach it have failed." "That's because they knew you were coming," Rivera said. "This time, we'll use our modifications to approach undetected, like we did with the scout ship." The plan would require a fleet of modified ships, with the Defiant leading the way. When presented to the full War Council, it met fierce debate. "You want us to entrust this critical mission to a human ship?" asked a skeptical Tresic elder. "No," Rivera replied firmly. "I want you to entrust it to the ship that has proven it can hurt the Vraxians. The ship your people laughed at is now your best hope." The chamber fell silent. Then, slowly, Admiral Scavor nodded. "The human is right. The Defiant will lead the mission." As preparations began, the crew felt a mix of pride and apprehension. Their ship, once mocked as obsolete, would now lead the coalition's most important offensive yet. "Quite a change," Miller said as she joined Rivera on the observation deck, watching alien engineers swarm over coalition ships, applying the human modifications. Rivera nodded. "Let's just hope it's enough." The modified coalition fleet moved through space in total silence. 20 ships, their engines altered to emit the special radiation pattern, approached the Vraxian supply base. At the front flew the Defiant, leading the way. "Radiation shields at full strength," reported Engineer Blackwood. "The Vraxians still can't detect us." On the bridge, Captain Rivera watched the tactical display. The Ta City system loomed ahead, its 4th planet surrounded by Vraxian defense platforms. "All ships maintain position," he ordered through the secure channel. "Remember the plan. We strike together or not at all." First Officer Miller studied the enemy formations. Their patrol ships are following standard routes. No sign they've spotted us. The coalition flagship, the massive Tresic dreadnought Eternal Victory, held position beside the Defiant. Admiral Scavor's voice came through the comm. "I never thought I would follow a human ship into battle. Today I am grateful to do so." Rivera smiled slightly. "Let's make sure we all live to remember this day, Admiral." The fleet moved deeper into the system. Science Officer Martinez monitored the radiation pulses, making small adjustments to keep them undetected. The tension on the bridge grew with each passing minute. "We're within strike range," announced Combat Officer Wright finally. Rivera took a deep breath. "All ships, activate attack pattern Delta. Begin the assault." The coalition ships burst into action, radiation pulses now focusing forward as weapons. The Vraxian defense platforms, their shields weakened by the radiation, fell quickly under the combined firepower. But the Vraxians recovered fast. Alarm signals blared across their base, and fighter ships poured out in response. "They're adapting their shields," warned Martinez, watching his readings. "The radiation effect is diminishing." "Push forward," Rivera ordered. "Hit the supply depots before they can organize." The battle exploded across space. Coalition ships fired continuously, their modified weapons breaking through the weakened Vraxian defenses. But the Vraxian fighters swarmed like angry insects, focusing their attacks on key targets. "The Eternal Victory is taking heavy fire," reported Communications Officer Chen. On the view screen, Rivera watched as dozens of Vraxian ships concentrated on the coalition flagship. Its shields flared brilliantly as it returned fire, but more enemy ships kept coming. Then a massive Vraxian dreadnought emerged from behind the planet. It was enormous, easily twice the size of the Eternal Victory. "New target detected," Wright announced unnecessarily. "It's the Vraxian command ship." The Vraxian dreadnought fired a powerful beam that cut through the Eternal Victory's weakened shields. The great ship shuddered, its engines failing. "Admiral Scavor reports critical damage," Chen said. "Their shields are down, weapons offline." Rivera made a quick decision. "Rodriguez, put us between the Victory and that dreadnought." "Sir?" Miller questioned, shock evident in her voice. "You heard me," Rivera said firmly. "All power to engines." The Defiant shot forward, positioning itself directly between the damaged flagship and the approaching Vraxian dreadnought. "Get me Martinez and Blackwood," Rivera ordered. When both officers reported in, Rivera outlined his desperate plan. "The structural scan we took of the scout ship. Would a larger Vraxian vessel have the same weakness near its main power core?" Martinez hesitated. "In theory, yes. But we'd need to hit it precisely at the junction point between the shield generators and the core." "How precisely?" "Direct contact," Blackwood said quietly, understanding the captain's plan. "We'd have to physically ram it at that exact spot." Rivera looked at his crew's faces. Each one showed the same determination he felt. "Rodriguez, plot a collision course, full speed. Target these coordinates." The Defiant surged forward, directly toward the massive Vraxian ship. The enemy vessel fired continuously, its weapons tearing into the Defiant's hull. "Shields failing," Wright reported. "Keep going," Rivera ordered. The distance closed. 3,000 meters, 2,000, 1,000. "All hands brace for impact," Rivera called. "It's been an honor serving with you all." The Defiant struck the Vraxian dreadnought precisely at its vulnerable point. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a chain reaction began inside the enemy vessel, spreading rapidly toward its power core. The Vraxian dreadnought exploded in a blinding flash of light, taking the front section of the Defiant with it. Bright lights slowly came into focus as Captain Rivera opened his eyes. The medical bay was unfamiliar, larger and more advanced than the Defiant's. For a moment, he felt disoriented. "He's awake," said a voice. Chief Medical Officer Phillips appeared beside him, looking tired but relieved. "The ship?" Rivera asked, his voice rough. "Damaged but not destroyed," Phillips answered. "The rear sections maintained hull integrity. We lost the forward compartments when we rammed the Vraxian ship." Rivera tried to sit up. Pain shot through his body, but he pushed through it. The crew? 17 injured, 3 critically, but everyone survived. Phillips helped him adjust his position. It's being called a miracle. The door slid open, and First Officer Miller entered, followed by Commander Sktar and Admiral Skavor. The Admiral looked different, humbler somehow. "Captain Rivera," the Admiral said formally, "the Coalition owes you and your crew a debt we cannot repay." Rivera looked between them. The battle. Miller smiled. "We won." After the Vraxian dreadnought was destroyed, their forces fell into disarray. The supply base was completely destroyed. The first major victory against the Vraxian horde. Sktar added, "Word is spreading through Coalition space. Everyone is talking about the human ship that changed the course of the war." 2 weeks later, Rivera stood in the massive dry dock where the Defiant was being rebuilt. The ship was barely recognizable. Its damaged sections had been removed, and new components were being added, a mix of human design and advanced alien technology. Engineer Blackwood walked beside him, pointing out the improvements. They're reinforcing the hull with Maludian alloys, but keeping the steel understructure that blocks Vraxian scans. The best of both approaches. "Will she still be the Defiant when they're done?" Rivera asked. "More than ever," Blackwood assured him. "They're not replacing her. They're evolving her." In the Coalition Council chamber, Ambassador Gomes sat at the main table, no longer relegated to a side seat. The Council was voting on a proposal to create a new class of hybrid warships based on the Defiant's design. The Human Coalition Defender class will combine durability with adaptability, announced the Tresic Council leader. Each member world will contribute their best technologies, but the basic design will follow Earth principles. The vote was unanimous. As Gomes left the chamber, she found Captain Rivera waiting. "Congratulations, Ambassador," he said. "Earth is finally an equal partner." "Thanks to you and your crew," she replied. "How does it feel to command a legend?" 6 months later, the rebuilt Defiant prepared for its first mission. The ship now looked sleeker but still maintained its distinctive human design elements. Inside, the crew moved with confidence through the improved systems. Rivera stood on the bridge, watching as alien cadets toured the ship. Once, visitors had come to mock. Now they came to learn. "Captain," called Communications Officer Chen, "Admiral Skavor wishes to speak with you." On the screen, the Admiral appeared more friendly than Rivera had ever seen him. "Captain, we've detected Vraxian movement in the Protean sector. The Coalition fleet is mobilizing, with the Defiant at the lead. We'll be ready in 30 minutes, Admiral." As the call ended, Flight Officer Rodriguez turned from her console. "Just like old times, sir. Except now they're following us instead of laughing." Rivera looked around at his crew. Humans who had proven their worth in a galaxy that had underestimated them. Through the viewport, he could see a line of new ships built with the same hybrid design as the rebuilt Defiant. "No," he said with a small smile. "Better than old times." As the Defiant pulled away from the station, other ships fell into formation behind it. Ships of every Coalition race, all modified with human innovations, ready to face the enemy together. The ship that aliens had once laughed at now led the fleet to war, its name spoken with respect throughout the galaxy. Not just a vessel anymore, but a symbol of what determination could accomplish against overwhelming odds. The legend of the Defiant had only just begun.